Well, good morning from Northern Colorado. This is Dr. Ecolonomic, Wayne Dorban, Dr. Ecolonomics. And this is our third try to do our live cast this morning using Blab. I don't know what's been happening, but I haven't had sound and it froze up on me. But I think we're going now. I think it's actually happening. And we're going to have some fun. But let's just start with a little bit of a recap. This is our fifth of what are becoming daily live casts. We've done one with a guest this week with Phil and Jen from Rent the Chicken. And there is replays of that are up on our Economics site. We've done 4 sessions now where we're talking very specifically about fish farming and about how to do fish farming. Actually, we're creating a course and a book about that topic. And this is how we're doing it. We're actually recording this live. We're transcribing it into text, and we're editing these live videos to add information that we would add additionally to enhance it so that we can use it for a course. So anyway, we're going to continue today. And we got started a little late, so we might go a little shorter today than normally. But we're going to tweet this out about learning how to fish farm. And we're going to send this up to our communities. And again, if we have some audience, we'll interact with you. If not, the main purpose of this is to create content for us so that we can use it as we're developing an amazing book and course. And it's not going to be free. So if you are able to catch the replay of this in the near term, and actually every session that we do, you're going to learn about something for free that otherwise you'd have to pay for, because it will be sold and there will be a lot of people that are going to be interested in it. And so hopefully this is one of those things where you go, man, I got it. I got into it early, and I was able to catch it before it started to have a cost associated with it. So today I'm going to talk about what are the kinds of organisms that you can grow in a small fish farm that you would have. Just to recap briefly, in the past sessions, we've talked about the different kinds of systems with tanks and with ponds. We've talked about how you could build a pond, what kinds of materials and containers you could use for a tank. Talked about planning. Please remember planning. Really important. Don't just go out there and create something and really highly expect you're going to be successful if you haven't planned. Now, I did say a number of times, I'll say it again now, that there's nothing wrong with going out and being an inventor, really. You're going to maybe fail some, but eventually you'll get it right. But just understand that failing, just not getting it right one time, doesn't mean that you're a failure. You should try it again. That's what most of the successful developers of any kind of technologies, any kinds of valuable things in the world have done. They've tried many, many times and not had success, and then they've eventually succeeded. And you can do that with your fish farm. But if you plan some, if you develop a business plan in advance, we'll talk more about that a little bit later. If you think about a marketing plan, where are those organisms you're producing going to go? Who's going to buy them? Are they going to be ornamental, for example? Meaning if they would be used in people's aquariums or pond systems. So in that case, your market would be stores, pet stores, especially small, privately owned. There's a huge market there. I would say, for example, that if you produce one particular kind of fish, koi, we'll actually show some pictures of them here in a minute, you could sell those almost anywhere you are in the world to a local pet store, and you could become their preferred provider. But what about edible animals and plants? What can those be? So let's talk about all those kinds of things here today. Let's talk about fish, mollusks, crustaceans, plants, and how you could use them. And I'm going to show you some pictures as we do that. So let's do that right now. Let's switch over to my camera view. And let's look at some fish and crustaceans. So this is a freshwater prawn or freshwater shrimp. Here's another one. Here's another one. Look, this one looks a little different. This is actually called a scud, where this one is called a prawn. Here's another species of prawn. Here's another scud-like type of shrimp or crustacean. Here's a beautiful blue one. All of these are edible. Most of these are somewhere in the range of 2 inches long, approximately. You probably would like to get hundreds of them to have a meal. Some of them can be very beautiful, lots of different colors, like you're seeing here. So you could grow shrimp. Here's a picture that shows what they look like on a plate. These would be they're called the giant freshwater shrimp. That's a full-size dinner plate from the Philippines. So what about fish? Let's talk about a variety of different kinds of fish. Let's talk first about fancy goldfish, or sometimes called koi. You can see here, look at these beautiful fish. I'm just going to scroll here and let you look at them. In the middle right now, there's a tank that you can see, a couple of them that have the fish in them. These are ornamental. These are used by people in systems that they're using for their own aesthetic beauty because they enjoy them. And again, you can see they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Very easy to grow. Probably one of the easiest kinds of fish. Here's a really, really cool graphic showing a bunch of different tail types, colors, sizes, and all being fancy goldfish. Or if you want to get scientific on us, Carassius auratus is the species. Just a little more science for you here whenever you see a name like this here, and it's probably a little small for you to see, but Carassius is what's called the genus name, and auratus is the species. I'm going to click on a couple more of the pictures that they have here that just show, this is obviously in Chinese, and you can't really read it. Let's just scroll just a little bit more. So these are fish that you could grow for people to buy for ornamental use, not for eating, although you can eat them. As a matter of fact, let me throw out a question. What kind of aquatic organism is eaten more than any other in the world? Well, I'll answer it for you. It's carp. And carp is a broad name, and I'll put that in here so you can see some that look a little bit more like you would expect. Look at this one here that this guy's got. Pretty large sucker. It's probably a 75-pound fish this guy's carrying. Carp is a broad name for a whole family of fish that includes goldfish, actually, that we were just showing earlier. And they are very edible. Goldfish are very edible. Places in the world, people eat them preferably. Again, they're the most eaten fish in the world. and they are bottom feeders. They grow prolifically in many places. They can grow very rapidly. They grow in lots of different kinds of water temperatures, and they're edible. As a matter of fact, again, eaten by more people in the world. We just don't eat a lot of them here in the United States. We think they're too bony. Sometimes we think they have a bad taste. So there's a picture. I click on this one where that's a goldfish, and yet goldfish are part of the carp family. So just showing you some pictures here. And you can grow carp for food. And if you're in tropical areas of the world, subtropical, maybe a really good choice. Let's talk about some fish species that you hear a lot about, that, again, in many places in the world, you can grow. Tilapia. Seeing a bunch of them here on this page. Again, lots of different colors. It's all the same species, different varieties. Here's a really colorful one. Here's one that's more common. It's called the red breast tilapia. Tilapia is the scientific genus Oreochromis. And again, lots of different looks of them. Now, this is not a fish you can grow anywhere in the world. We get asked this all the time. Tilapia will not tolerate water temperatures below about 12 C, and they'll die at temperatures below 10 C. So if you can't heat your water to a temperature above that, you can't grow tilapia. Some places in the United States, at least, they're banned because water temperatures will stay above that temperature. They're not native, and if they were to escape or be actually thrown away into a toilet even, they could begin to grow in water sources where they would cause an ecological problem. Tilapia, within their environmental temperature range, grow prolifically, grow very well, highly accepted as a food source. People around the world love them. Here's a fried tilapia, probably somewhere in the world where people like to eat fish with the heads on. Here in the United States, we actually like to take the heads off. Interestingly, this one looks like it was prepared and it wasn't even cleaned first, which not something we understand here in the US a lot, but it's done. Let's look up another species that you could grow on a wide variety of locations in the world, including almost every temperature range that you have, and that's broadly the whole category called catfish. Number of pictures of them here. All a bottom-dwelling fish. By the way, tilapia are primarily herbivores. They eat plants. They are what we call pelagic, which means they swim up in the water column and are not so attracted to the bottom, let's say. I don't know why I picked a fish. Oh, it's that snake was eating a catfish. Catfish can get very large. There's a one that says 10 biggest catfish world records of all time. No idea how much this one weighs, but it's hundreds of pounds, obviously. Obviously, you wouldn't grow them to that size. You would want to grow them to somewhere between 1 kilogram and 2 kilograms in size, depending on, again, your temperature. If you're growing them in a more tropical area, you could grow these fish in 6 months to an edible size. In a temperate area, temperatures probably averaging 10 C and getting down to freezing, and maybe in the summertime being up to 25 C. It would be a much longer growth time, maybe over a year and longer. There's one of the reasons that the catfish gets its name, and that it has that little bit of a look in its head, like a cat. And there's a funny picture, actually a video, but a picture of a dog with its paws on top of a catfish in the water. So there's just some evidence of catfish. Let's talk about a couple more types of fish that you could think about growing. Let's look at trout. Trout are a cold water fish, the opposite of some of these others, tilapia, for example, that will not tolerate lower temperatures. Trout will not tolerate higher temperatures. Usually they will die at temperatures over 25 C, maybe even a little bit less. They really like temperatures in the 16 to 17 C, and they thrive on temperatures in the 12 to 15 C range. Again, where you can grow them, they're a very attractive food source, very attractive here in the United States. We would call them probably one of the most eaten fish, but interestingly, they're not throughout most of the world because actually so little of the world lives in colder climates. They can get very large. This is actually not a trout. This isn't a saltwater. Funny, this is called a trout, but it's not in the trout family. Trouts belong to a family called salmonids, and that's specifically, the name comes because of a fin that they have, a little more detail than you maybe want, but it's this fin back behind the big dorsal fin. I'm circling this with my cursor. It's this one right here called an adipose fin, and that's indicative of the salmonid family of fish, which is broadly called trout and salmon. Let's move away from fish back to mollusks, which would be what a lot of times you'd call clams or snails. Let's look at some of those that you could possibly culture. So here are snails. That are really excellent food. You eat essentially their feet. So they crawl along. You can see these here. This is a mussel that is their big, large foot underneath them. So that's a broad category. Most of the time we think about actually clams or oysters. This is an oyster here. You can actually see a pearl in the middle of this one. What you would eat here is the mussel, again, that's around this. And again, clams and snails come in lots of different varieties. And depending on where you're at in the world, you could grow a variety of different kinds of mollusks. I'm not going to talk a lot about them because they're a little more difficult, probably not something you'd specifically think about. So let's move back to fish. So there are a couple more types that you might think about. One that probably is very attractive in, again, temperate climates, but they'll also grow well in more tropical areas, are called broadly the family of fish called perch. And here are pictures of perch. Here's probably a common shape and look. This is a yellow perch, which is common in the United States. Here's another yellow perch, but one that's a little thicker in its body. Again, on a fish, a little more detail, you're going to eat the mussel that is mainly in the broad part of its body here. We typically call that a fillet, which really is the meat that's above the bones in most species. Part of the reason that people don't like carp in the US is that meat's actually in between the bones. And it's not a lot of the meat that's out above it, like this would be in this fish, in what we would call a fillet. Perch can get very large. Here's one in a Nile perch, which is probably a tilapia, actually. Tilapia are called perch in lots of places in the world. Here's a little different species. This is a sand perch from Mexico. Some kinds of perch are really small. They're actually used more as feeder fish. Here's what's called a shiner perch that is not one that is usually harvested to be eaten by humans. It's eaten widely by other fish, carnivorous fish. Trout, by the way, we talked about earlier, are carnivores. They eat meat. And they would eat fish like this shiner. Matter of fact, this is a common food of trout and salmon in rivers in the western United States. I'll just show kind of a funny picture here. There's a person that's being rather stupid, putting their head inside of a fish. So we're actually coming close to our stop time today. I'm going to show you one other kind of fish that you might think about. And it's the broad category, which we call bass. And particularly in, again, temperate areas, with both perch and catfish and bass, they will grow all the way from water that's just above freezing that might, for example, in the winter have ice on top of it, all the way up to temperatures that are in the 30s. You can get too high of a temperature for fish. Any fish, when the temperature gets really highly elevated, will not tolerate elevated temperatures. But again, these families, bass, perch, catfish, those broad groups, will typically grow in a wide range of temperatures. Bass, which there's a bunch of different varieties, this is called the Sewanee bass, can get large, but a lot of times they really like to grow in size ranges that would be excellent for harvesting for human consumption. So this is a smallmouth bass. This happens to be, as it says, from Wisconsin. That looks like it's about a 1 kilogram size, which would be excellent edible. This fish, bass, also have a really nice edible portion, the muscle, which is called the fillet here. Relatively easily grown in an aquaculture system. Here is another. This is actually a largemouth bass shown in its natural environment, swimming in the weeds. So that would be it for bass. So we're going to come back to me here to end this up. So in summary, today we talked about aquatic animals. Actually didn't talk about plants so much. We'll talk about that when we talk about aquaponics more, a little bit later in the course. So we talked about the kinds of aquatic animals that you can grow in your home fish farming system. And it isn't just fish. Again, remember, you could grow mollusks, crustaceans, shrimp, clams, and a variety of different fish species. You could grow them for ornamental purpose, so you could sell them to pet stores. One of the things I didn't talk about, if you're in an area where lots of fishing occurs, you could grow organisms for selling to people that are fishermen. That would be bait fish. So the market there is wonderful in a lot of places. I want to end it on this, and that's to talk about if you're thinking about fish farming as a hobby or a small business, you want to have a niche. A niche means something that's unique, not just broad that everybody else is doing. You want to have something that is enough different that you can sell for a higher price, and you have a much better market. Don't just think about doing something you've read about that everybody does. Do something unique and different where there's a specific demand in your particular area, which is one of the reasons that planning is so important. So I think it's a great time for us to end today. We've gone about our half hour in time. And again, we're doing this whole series, and we'll start again on a couple days from now. Today's Friday as we do this live. On Monday, we'll start again. We'll be having additional guests throughout our Ecolonomics in Action session. Tell your friends, especially if you're watching this as a replay, subscribe, watch it live. We're going to be putting it out on a variety of different websites through as we expand this. We're not like a lot of the typical blabs and live casts that have attractive stuff for kind of everybody. We know this is specific. It's only a certain group of people that are going to want to watch this and learn from us. We hope that's you. Have a great day, and we'll be with you again very, very soon.